Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining today's webinar, Closing the Skills Gap, Part 2. This webinar is co-hosted by ISA and Maverick Technologies. I'm Michaela Cooper with ISA and I'll be hosting today's webinar. But before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items to let you know how you can participate in today's webinar. First, in regards to the poll questions and question and answer session, we do have 4 poll questions throughout the webinar. And when the poll question pops up, we ask that you enter your answer into the poll feature, which is on your WebEx navigation on the right-hand side. And I want to remind you that this is completely anonymous, so feel free to join in and engage with us. You don't need to worry about anybody seeing what you answered on which poll question. We also have one Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and to submit your questions, you'll just want to type those into the Q&A box that's also in your WebEx navigation on the right-hand side of your screen. We ask that you do not use the chat toolbox for your Q&A questions. Just leave those into the Q&A box to keep that organized so the presenters know where to pull the Q&A questions from. If the presenters are unable to get to your question by the end of the webinar, feel free to reach out to them and their information will be given at the end of the webinar. Second, for those of you who just joined, we just want to make sure that you do remain on mute. And there will be a survey at the end of this webinar that will pop up in your browser. It doesn't take more than a minute or so to complete it. We just want to hear how today's webinar was and get your feedback so that way we can always improve our webinars and make them useful for you. And if you want to see any of the dial-in or phone connection instructions, again, you can refer to the confirmation email that I sent to you, or if you go to the event info tab, that information's there for you as well. Okay, so I think that takes care of all the housekeeping matters. And to get started, I'd like to introduce our presenters. First, we've got Ramamoorthy. He has 13 years of industrial automation experience. He is currently the Strategic Manufacturing Solutions Manager at Maverick Technologies, overseeing the sustaining services practice. Ram has been in this position for 4 years and is responsible for the daily operations of the Global Operations Center, Plant Floor 24. He is responsible for staffing, training, developing Plant Floor 24 resources. The center provides a wide range of on-demand industrial control system and manufacturing IT support services on a 24/7, 365 basis. Ram has a master's degree in electrical engineering from the Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and works in Maverick's Columbia, Illinois office. Welcome. And second, we've got John Cramer. He has 15 years of industrial automation experience. He is currently the operations manager at Maverick Technologies, overseeing the West Region Automation Services practice. John has been in this position for 5 years and is responsible for managing 4 offices. He is responsible for project execution, staffing, resource development, regional financials, and regional growth strategy. His region supports multiple industries, including dairy, oil and gas, pulp and paper, semiconductor, and pharmaceutical. John has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Southern California and a master's degree in engineering management from California State University, Northridge. He works in Maverick, Santa Ana, California office. Welcome. All right, so from here on out, I'm going to pass it off to the presenters and going to pass the baton over to Ram to go over the agenda.
Thank you, Michaela. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for your time and participating in this webinar today. The agenda we have between John Cramer and myself, we are going to talk about the state of the automation industry. How did we get here in terms of having a skill gap in our industry, the impacts that it has in the automation industry in itself, and game plan on how we can bridge the gap and examples of what we have done here at Maverick between John and I and a few others across the organization to bridge the gap, and our approach to the problem, and we'll share some results with you and go over a few workflow examples on how it works. And then I'll turn it over to Johnny, and he'll cover the same topic from a different angle to give you guys more examples on the knowledge matrix, the skills evaluation, and the skill gap analysis he does, and the talent leads that he uses across his organization to bridge the gap, to have a pulse on where the industry is going, plus what skills his people would need at any given time. And we'll conclude with a Q&A session and pass it over to Michaela for going over a few other ISA housekeeping items. Having said that, I will jump right in and discuss with you what we have discovered in our experience being in our current roles between Johnny and I. 6, 7, 8 years ago, 2007, 2008, when the economy started slowing down, a lot of organizations realized they were going through a phase where the people that they had working in their organizations, their skills were concentrated, and they had a limited group of employees that were experts. And the second level to backfill them, in some cases, just didn't exist. And then they had the third level where they had people with 0 to 5 years of experience to do day-to-day tasks. The gap was evident at that time, and most people that were knowledgeable to perform their high-level tasks within an organization were also the most experienced people. And that's made us think what happened when, and we were going through a similar situation, and it made us think what happened when the people that are the most experienced, the experts, the mentors retire. Did we have a plan? And we had to come up with a solution internally for us, and we were not unique. A lot of other companies, people outside of Maverick had similar problems. And we started doing some more homework, and this is what I found interesting, and I'm going to share it with you guys here. And his studies have shown dollar spent in manufacturing returns 37%, $37 back to the economy. And every 100 new manufacturing jobs created creates another 250 jobs in other sectors. If we pause and take a look at it, that is a significant growth to the economy as a country and to the GDP. And nearly 3.5 million manufacturing jobs need to be filled in the next 10 years. And in one of my slides, I'm going to talk about how the gap between now and 2030 is going to be more prominent than the gap between 2030 and 2050. And if you think about it, 2 million of those jobs would be by people that won't have experience to fill in. And all of us have customers, clients that we work with, and we are all accountable to somebody to deliver a quality product. And if you're bringing new people in, and if you don't have a plan to train them, and you don't have a plan to do quality checks on the product, at the end of the day, the final product that's going to go out to the door might be compromised. So we are also going to talk about a few examples on our quality process in these slides. And the last piece we realized is we have a problem, and how do we solve the problem? Either you can bring in people from outside, the more experienced hires, or you can have talent grown. And we at Maverick decided to go somewhere in the middle. We hired both experienced people, but we also made a conscious effort to hire 30 engineers a year, and we prioritized training for those 30 engineers coming in. And the reason we did that is you need to have a mix when you're tackling a problem like this. And the other key driver is a cultural fit. The people we hire, how are they going to fit within our organization? How are they going to fit within the clients we serve? And we figured out it was pretty intuitive that Kemi out of Auburn coming in that has the potential, that has the right skills, and if you train that person with the right attitude and teach him the skills that this person needs, he or she needs to be successful, we had a better chance of being successful in growing and mentoring talent. And the big picture to that is it's also going to help us grow as a company, and when the demand is right there, there needs to be 3.5 million people added to the manufacturing industry over the next 10 years. So that is that is a current situation from looking back a few years. And if you take a look at it from a different angle, look at the number of people on the graph on the current situation, which is a couple of years old, the blue graph on the left from 2014, the number of people that are population that's 65 or over. The U.S. is at 14.5. There are some countries ahead, and the good thing about this chart is between 2014 and 2050, the population percentage is going to be relatively the same, between 14% today to 20% in the future. And this is a global problem. It is happening everywhere, and from a U.S. standpoint, has fewer residents over 65 years as a percentage of the population. The other way to look at it is today's teens or 20, 25-year-old kids, when they enter the workforce, there is enough of those to offset their parents' retirement, and the dependency ratio, if you look at a future, if you look at this trend, will flatten out by 2030. So that's the message I wanted to convey out of this slide. Is it is a global problem, not just a U.S. problem. And lucky for us here that we have a handle on that, and that between now and 2050. The other way to look at it is the labor force will also increase by about 24 million, and there needs to be a training program to bridge the gap. There are people that can do the work, and the people need to be trained and put in a position to be successful, to be able to do the work. So that is the other key point I wanted to make out of this slide is majority of the future job openings would come from replacing existing workforce, and studies have shown that's about 2/3. The remaining 1/3 is going to be the growth in the industry in itself. The other part of what we have found is how does this impact the automation industry? The demand is always increasing. Globalization is a trend, and the global economy is sometimes shrinking, sometimes growing, depending on who you ask. But the reality of the matter is all of us that have responsibilities of hiring and training people, we always struggle to find the right fit and grow the person and keep people motivated. And if you've hired a newer engineer, chance of you being able to motivate that person is going to be different than how the motivation works for somebody that's a little older. The other part of the whole automation industry outlook is the global competitive edge is why outsource when you can offshore or onshore is a question. And we at Maverick, what we have is we have a plan here where we are able to competitively provide services to our clients at offshore rates sitting here in Columbia, Illinois. So that, and part of a few slides here is going to be an example of why offshore when you can onshore work. And it is not just the automation industry. You can extrapolate that to other industries as well. And it is easier if the people you are working with are working in your same time zone a few hundred miles away rather than a few thousand miles away. And skilled automation workers cannot be easily replaced. I'm sure everybody that's attending this webinar will realize that. Just at a time when you need to grow and people are retiring, it's going to be very hard to replace them. Again, I want to summarize the situation before we go into the solution part of it. Aging workforce is a real problem. Inexperienced team members as you're hiring is a real problem. Loss of effective startup methods to take a product from the design, define phase to implementing the solution to starting up a plant, a line, or a facility is going to be a problem unless it is addressed. And those are factors locally. And we look at factors that you cannot control, the effects of globalization and global competition and pressure on pricing if you're a global company. And the workforce is always going to be lean. Everybody on this call hopefully would agree that you're running your organizations, your departments with the least possible headcount required. And when somebody takes a week off or somebody has an emergency and has to take a month off, you're hurting for quality people to replace. And you're also sharing people between different departments, people doing maintenance work, doing CapEx work versus people working in the utility area, also working in different areas of the plant just to keep the place running. And all this adds up to tighter schedule, the lesser number of headcount you have on site, and pretty much all your operational duties will take priority over capital duties because you still need to keep the place up and running and products going out. So in summarizing all this, this is the challenge that the manufacturing environment faces today. And now I want to open up to a poll question here. Training, how many of your employees say they need more training on a day-to-day basis? I'm sure you guys have a monthly one-on-ones with your employees or your managers, and there is a performance review process, and employees giving their feedback. I would like to know what the group here thinks in terms of what the employees say when they need training. The second question is, if you're in the budgeting cycle, is training covered in your yearly budget? And the third part of it is, if the answer is, I'm hoping everybody has training in there, but what happens when things become tight, when budget cuts happen and you roll up your budget and send it to your boss and he sends it to his boss, and the reply you get is, hey, we need to cut 10% from somewhere on your budget. Is training cost at risk? So I want you guys to share your experiences with us so we can discuss this after a few slides. And the polling should have opened up on your WebEx on the right-hand side of your window. Take a look at this chart. What if we told you you could make your startup, production, maintenance, training experience a lot better, more efficient by having a crew mix of senior people and junior people? Here at Maverick, we have something what we call as a 4-to-1 ratio. That's 421. And the way it works is without compromising quality, without compromising schedule, you can effectively plan and have a team of 4 entry-level to 0 to 3 years of experienced people, have them supervised by 2 mid-level people, which is the 2 in the 4-to-1 ratio, and have those 2 supervised by 1 senior engineer. So we call it the pod. So the pod will have a pod lead, a technical lead, or a senior engineer, whatever phrase you would want to use. And the second level, to summarize, would be 2 mid-level people that have done it, that they've been trained, they are considered experts, but not subject matter experts per se. Maybe not knowing all the check boxes to check. They might have 8 out of the 10 categories mastered to take to the next level to be a lead. And if you pair them with 4 entry-level people, you could save project timelines. So this graph shows when you bring a new person into a project team, which is the red line, the efficiency of that new person coming in is going to be low. They need to understand the process, they need to understand the procedures, the people, the technology, and the soft skills of the dynamics of working in a team. And you bring a senior person in, the senior person might have a lot of these figured out, but still has to wait for the definition documents to be complete. Unless you're doing a design build, then has to do more QC work, and there could be some repetitive work. And the senior person's efficiency is going to ramp up and hit a point where this person is going to be highly efficient. And then as a project goes into cruise control until the 65–70% of completion point, then the efficiency is going to drop off because you're tying up your time with doing checkouts on site, and few other people that might be helping you might be delayed on their aspect. So if you look at the 3 vertical lines, the first vertical line is an independent performer. What would it take for somebody that's coming in that has learned the standard, that's been trained to perform their tasks independently with minimal supervision? And the middle line is, what if we made this person do additional training on the job and ramp up this person early? The graph after this is going to show you what the middle line means. The last line is where the person that's new to your job, at what point during a project that you think, yeah, if I give it to this person, I can walk away and I know he'll get it done. He knows the expectations, and we have checks and balances in place. And the last part is, what could you do to avoid a project closeout delay? Because all of us, like I said, have customers and clients in some way, shape, or form, that we are accountable to deliver a project on time, under budget, and complete all the scopes that we promised. So if you take this graph, visualize this for a minute, and look at the next one here, where I'll show you a little bit. So this graph is a representation of what if we took the new guy and made this new person shadow a senior person for a few weeks, and have the new resource coming into your job be mentored to be a trainer in the future. So the goal is, if I'm a senior person on the job, I'm not going to train. It's not the most efficient use of my time to train 2 new engineers every 3 weeks. Instead, what if we took the first or the second or the first 2 or 3 new people coming into my team, and I trained them to be the trainer in the future? That way, I'm giving them real work, and after completing the real work, these new engineers coming into your project would be writing training documents for you that can be reused over and over again. And the goal, I don't know how your guys' brain works, but my brain works when I have to teach somebody something. I'm going to make sure I'm going to learn that as hard as I can, because I don't want to stand in front of 5 people trying to be the trainer and not be good at what I'm trying to train. And most millennials want to impress their peers. Most millennials want to have a sense of purpose. They want to have a sense of value. And what we have found is, you take a junior person coming into the team, pair him with a senior person that's been experienced for 20, 30 years, and the senior guy just wants to do technical work, doesn't care for spending 2 hours a day every week training somebody. So you're building a synergy, you're building a team where you're documenting what is in this person's brain, putting it in writing, filing those training documents, and assigning a few new engineers coming into your group to be the trainers of the future. And what this graph shows is, if you do that, the senior person is going to be more efficient doing things that he likes to do, doing things that he's probably one of 3 people in your project team capable of doing those tasks. And this person's efficiency is going to go up. And what we are also going to do is, the new person that came into your team is going to be qualified, trained, ready to take the next step a lot faster in the project timeline. And what we have found is the project quality is also going to be high, because the senior engineer, instead of sitting behind a keyboard and typing the keystrokes here and trying to program something, has trained somebody, and you have 3 people doing the work for him, and all this person is doing is QCing their work, providing a better quality. And if he has to jump in and do some work to meet a deadline, he can, and most likely will. And the junior person has written more training documents. So guess what? 6 months from now, if you have to start a next project, you have empowered your new engineers on your job to be trainers. You have empowered them to be at a point where they're going to their career path to become a technical lead is fast-tracked. And that's a key takeaway from this slide is, when you bring in people early into the job, make sure you have checks and balances from a senior resource to deliver the training and do quality checks. And the newer resource obligation back to the project team and to their organization is develop enough training modules and documents that if every employee coming into an organization creates one of these training modules a week, and you have 50 employees, think about it, you get 50 new training documents every week, multiply that by 52. You see the math there. And that was our game plan for success. We did realize, was it easy? Not on the very first go around. We did learn a few things. Change is hard. If somebody has been doing something for 30 years, having a one-on-one with them during their performance review and say, hey, I'm going to change something here. You're the expert, but guess what? You're going to train the next guy. And the first person, the senior guy sitting in front of you, how am I supposed to train somebody to take my job? And the conversation is important, because that is not what you're trying to do. All you're trying to do is have a buy-in from everybody from your team, have the senior person understand that his value to the organization is more important, creating the next set of leaders. And the measurement we have here at Maverick, we measure our leaders not by the number of followers they have, but by the number of leaders they create. And if every senior person understands that, and that is the value and their purpose to the organization, they are going to buy into your plan. The worst thing you could do is not communicate this effectively to your senior people. That is going to be one of the reasons if this fails is probably because of lack of communication. And once you have buy-in from everybody, you need to have a very good talent acquisition group to make sure you hire the best people that you can find. And goes back to 3 things or 4 things: people, process, rigor, technology. Hire the best people you can find, have the best process you can tweak on and off, make sure you have checks and balances, make sure there is rigor, make sure there is QC checks, make sure there is enough accountability from your team. The last piece is technology. Use technology to your advantage and reduce the bureaucracy of this process. Make sure if you're asking somebody to fill out a QC form from a senior engineer, make it more than just a checkbox that somebody's going through the process of saying yes. And most likely if you do that, what's going to happen is I'm going to pick the one that I did last week, Control-C, Control-V, change the date, change the name, and say I did the QC check. So the eliminating bureaucracy is the second key point after communicating, because everybody has good processes. The people, talent available out there is going to be the same for most organizations to hire. And if you monitor and control, you have a plan to success. And John Cramer is going to talk about a few other categories here, the last 2 bullets. We call it the 4 A's and the measurement of ROI. So we'll go from there. The next slide I want to talk about is the workforce planning process on the 6 B's. So our CEO was at an event in Nashville a few weeks ago, and he used this slide to deliver the message of what we think, where our brain is as an organization. And Paul's 6 B's were by hire the right people, obviously, and have contingent workforce. When you grow, you're always going to have peak shavings. You need to work your resource plan to make sure you are covering when you have peaks and valleys within your on-demand cycle. And if you can't find the people, it's okay to take a little bit time and develop internal people. Doing it right, even if it takes longer, is better than doing it wrong over a shorter duration. You're going to have better cultural alignment. The expectations between the employee, the employer, the senior resource is going to be well aligned. There's going to be a time where you'll have to borrow somebody, a consultant or outsource, and we use the word, I'm fortunate to have a 24/7 workforce, and we use peak shaving internally. A lot of companies won't have the luxury of having somebody working, their day job is working Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and that's their 40-hour work week. And our project managers use that to their advantage to, when you're doing a startup, you don't want to burn out your startup engineer, so we offshore our work to Columbia, Illinois, to take care of those works on night shifts, and the next morning your senior engineers are refreshed. So you, as an organization, can come up with creative ways to reuse, repurpose internal people. So on that note, I want to take a pause here and turn over to the polling question and see what kind of results we've got from polling here. Let me pull that up. So the first poll question was, how many of your employees said training was very critical to them? The majority of the response was about 50% of you said, it's approximately 50%, half your employees said they wanted training. More than 2/3 of, 40% of the responses came back saying more than 2/3 of their employees said they needed training. So that is in line with what we've heard from others. Training has been the keyword over the past few years when technology changed, when processes change, when people change. So that's in alignment with, so to summarize that question, only 10% of the responders to the survey said less than 1/4 of their employees said they needed training. So it's validated what we thought here. The second question is training in your yearly budget? The answer was, it was surprising to me. I thought the answer would be different. 40% of the responders said yes, 60% said no. And the last question is, when budget cuts happen, is training the first one? Which is also surprising to me. 100% of the responders said yes. So when budget cuts happen, training is one of those that is getting impacted, which is, I thought it would be high, but I never would have guessed that everybody that answered that survey would have said 100% of you. But that's why going back to this slide is very important. If you cannot budget training and send people to a training program or carve out 3 weeks of somebody's 52-week yearly cycle to focus on training, going back to the slide, there is a way you can get creative and bring a new person to shadow a senior person's job, improve efficiency. And if you look at this graph, this junior person is, if he's creating training manuals and understanding what he's doing and training others, if you trust somebody to be a trainer on a job, think about the efficiency this person is going to bring on executing the scope for you. So this slide, the survey validated this slide for us here. And I have a couple of more slides before I turn it over to John Cramer here. And one of the other ways to look at the same age gap or the aging workforce, if you remember the picture on the left, I talked about it. I wanted to emphasize that it's a global problem. Millennials in the workforce in the U.S. is about 1/3 today. It's going to grow by 2020 to 46%. 2030 is the key point. The takeaway from this slide I want everybody to have is millennials walk into an organization with expectation of what they want the job to provide them. Meaning, I want to be challenged, I want to learn something new every day, and I want to have a sense of purpose. And if you can accomplish all that, you would have a very highly satisfied employee. The reality of the matter is there are some things that are within your control and some not within your control. When the reality of the job that is given to an employee minus their expectations is what I call the employee satisfaction index. And the key to improve that, happy employees means better product to all your customers. The key to that slide, or this takeaway from this slide, is communicating with your employees of what the reality of the situation is and understanding their expectations so you can meet their expectations. And it's a two-way street. They need to know what your expectations are as their supervisor when they walk into the door every day. So I know I mentioned this once before. Communication was the number one item we discovered, and that applies to this slide as well. I want to summarize a few more things. Our approach was to leverage skills you have in-house. We talked about the build versus buy model. After all this, what we have found was it increases efficiency, increases the quality, reduces rework, improves flexibility. Think about it, when you're tight on schedule, if you have 30, 40 new engineers that you have hired can be trained within a year to fill roles, think about the impact it gives you as an organization and the flexibility it gives you to move pieces around to meet your clients' changing demand. And it also helps employee retention. I've used the word, the sense of purpose. Millennials want to be valued, and training them on a new platform. In our controls industry, depending on where you work, there are different technologies, Yokogawa, Rockwell, Emerson, Honeywell, so on and so forth. If you can train a new engineer coming in over a period of time and within 6-7 years of his career within your organization, if this person can work on 4 different technologies, 3 or 4 different platforms, and have the soft skills to be a technical lead versus a trainer and continually learn new technologies and new processes, it gives you as a supervisor more efficiency and more flexibility to manage your resources. And what it also did for us, it decreased our training costs because we didn't have to have special training. We were training people on the job. It improved the total cost, decreased the total cost of the project, so improved our efficiency of what we deliver to our clients, and it helped our business grow. And this is the last summary before I turn it over to Johnny, is how do you bring everything together? You gather the data, you talk to your people, You have the team contribute to a skills assessment questionnaire when they start a job, and then they complete the same skills assessment questionnaire when they complete the job. So then you know where your risks are. If today if you're running a department and you have only 2 people that can do different tasks that need to get done, you have a 10-person team, you have a risk. Your goal should be to make sure that multiple people within your team can do multiple skills. So we have, for some of our clients, we provide that as a service where we come in and do a skills assessment upfront, and then work with them to develop training documents and so on and so forth. And we've done it internally as well. The key takeaway from this is to make sure you have the skills assessment questionnaire answered by the entire team, so you're baselining everybody's skills on day 1. Then you identify the strengths and weaknesses of your current team. Then you go through your skills delivery, and then at the back end of it, you're going to evaluate, did everybody complete what we thought they should complete. The expert trains the trainee, like I said, and the trainee writes training manuals and trains others. It eases the burden on the expert. The expert is very responsible to verify the deliverables. So what we have also done is when somebody says they've gone through training, we don't have a 5-question, 10-question SharePoint Q&A document. We go grab a conference room, the trainee, the expert, the trainers, we all sit, just start talking about, under this scenario, what would you do? What have you learned? What do you think, if you were to redo the training, what would you improve? So you're giving the person that went through the training to give a feedback, and 3 people looking at the same document can look at it 3 different ways. Maybe did the new trainee see something that people before him or her overlooked? And then when the process is complete, we validate and certify this person to be eligible to work on a specific project. And Johnny and I will show you a few more examples there. And tying it all together, if you have not realized you have a talent skill gap problem, it's not too late, but the problem is real. It's bigger than you think it is. The automation industry is complex. There are different processes, technology, the dynamics of people, some legacy systems and some new systems. You cannot steal your way. You need to have a business strategy for it. And again, you're going to have hiccups. You're going to have challenges. But as long as you have clear expectations and you communicate, you're going to be okay. And if you work with millennials, you know they are unique. They want their expectation, the way they want to be treated in a job is different from how you might have treated other employees before. And you as a supervisor has to be flexible enough as well to understand how to train the next generation of people. So in summarize, you cannot steal your way to talent success anymore. You need organic growth, you need cultural fit, you need to have training program, processes in place to be successful. The example I showed you, the knowledge matrix, how you identify your knowledge skills, your silos. One size doesn't fit all. Plan the knowledge transfer, knowledge capture, transition, unique, make it unique for every employee, and make sure you have an expert review program and a skills evaluation program at the back end of it. And even if you don't have real project work to give somebody, you can always pick a project that somebody else had completed, take it off the shelf and give it to a new employee and say, hey, if this was a new project coming into the door, go ahead and execute it based on the training you got. And this is another example of a skill matrix where you have different skills listed on the column headings and list of all the people. And if you are one person that is an expert on multiple platforms, that is a risk, because what if this person won the lottery tomorrow and decided that they want to quit? You don't have anybody filling this category here. And the other risk is you have a new entrant coming in, a new trainee that's trained on multiple platforms. And if this person were to work on a project, guess what? You need to have a better QA, QC, mentoring review program. And this is the other way to look at it. I'm just showing a few examples of what we have used internally. This lists all the people, and this lists the platforms and the subcategories within this platform. So this orange header subcategory would be similar to this. So if you want to look at your entire team across multiple platforms and multiple packages, this you could go with this. Again, this is not something nobody has done before. It's not a fancy tool. It is just that you need to have a tool like this to understand where your skills are. And again, going back to this slide here, you got to identify where your holes are. You got to come up with a training program. You got to create a training program that's unique for everybody. You got to have an expert reviewing the program and a trainee creating more training documents. At the end of the day, the skills evaluation and on-the-job training has to be performed. And if you keep it as a SharePoint, yes, no, 5-question list to certify somebody, in our experience, we have found not going that route is probably a lot better than getting a conference room and having a face-to-face conversation for an hour with a new trainee. It builds collaboration, it builds trust, it improves communication, and if you're looking for ideas, I would highly recommend you go down that road. Having said that, this is a sample of the type of questions that I have. So after training is complete, when I sit with an employee and we talk through different training requirements, after the training is complete or as the training Q&A is going on, we try to document the list of questions that were discussed with this person. And the reason is not for any other reason than I want to document a conversation that happened. If there are holes, assign it as an action item. If it is not written, the conversation didn't happen. Having said that, I'm going to turn it over to John Cramer here for his part of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Cramer. I'm going to kind of go through talking about skill gap analysis. It's something at Maverick that we use that we find to be pretty beneficial. Ram had mentioned about the knowledge matrix and everything like that. We use that a lot for our technical skills. At Maverick, we're an independent systems integrator, so we basically work on a lot of different platforms. So that's the need for that knowledge matrix, because we've got, it's really our people inventory that kind of shows we've got skills in lots of different areas and understanding where those skills lie and where we need growth and improvement. So first, I've got a poll question I'm going to have you guys answer, and then I'm going to follow up with that later on in the slide. So it should be over on the right-hand bar. If you could just quickly answer that, and then we'll look at the results of that later on. So for skill gap analysis, the important part of this is you want to make sure you're focused on the right things in your people development. So you need to know what skills your people need to have for the different roles they're in. Because as you bring in people from, right out of school to people that are in the industry for a long time, they may come from other industries or come with different backgrounds and skill sets. You want to make sure that the people you have in those roles have the right skills, and if they don't, you need to develop a plan to fill those gaps. So the first part of doing a skill gap analysis is defining what skills that you have within your company or your department, and what are the critical things that they need to that you need to look at to evaluate. You want to look at these areas for training and development. What skills are you looking for when you go out to hire someone? What are the things you're looking for in those people? And that'll help you to kind of define what those skills are. And then the next step is defining the different levels within those skills. And one of the ways you can do that is get feedback from your resources at different levels. Because within your organization, you're going to have people that are experts and maybe people that are new, but they'll be able to help you kind of define basically the different levels to identify where people fall within that. This can be difficult to get consensus within the organization, but basically just getting that feedback and then sitting down and reviewing that with the experts of those skills, they can really help kind of identify, the different stepping stones or different levels within those skills. And then you need to determine the skill level required for each title or role within your company. So a good way to do that is kind of assess based on your current resources. So you look at the people in those different roles and kind of what they're, the ones that are successful and doing well, okay, they have the right skills, so that's what we want to kind of model and get everyone else within the organization to have those similar skills. You can also look at hiring criteria and then also maybe even HR job descriptions that you may have. And so I'm going to show you an example. This is one that we've developed. And it basically, you've got your skills, and then you got their current level, and then a little description of what that level means, like basic, capable, proficient, expert. And so that as throughout their career, they're going to improve in those different areas. And then what we have is their current position. So like for this example, you got an engineer 2, and their next position within our organization would be senior engineer, and you can kind of see anything in red is where there's a gap. So those would be areas you want to focus on, and then put a development plan and a training plan to fill that gap so that they're able to meet all the skill levels for that position, and then also start working on the positions for their next role within the company. And so how do you identify and close those gaps? Well, the first thing we like to do is get a self-assessment, because it's important for an employee to be involved in the process. So they get an opportunity to say, okay, here's where I think I'm at with my skill level, and so they kind of rate themselves. Then the next thing you do is you bring an expert in to kind of assess that. So you may be doing some hands-on stuff, look at project work they've been doing, and assess where they're really at so that you know really where your gaps are. But someone might think they're really good at something, but then when you do the assessment, you may say, well, there is still a gap there, so let's put a plan together to fill that gap. So then you can use a tool like the one we've developed to kind of assess where those gaps are, and then also what the gaps are for the next role. And then the best way to fill the gaps is you create a detailed training plan for both short-term and for long-term to fill those gaps. And then you set the goals and training needs on an annual basis. And we, at Maverick, we try to do this on a biannual basis, so twice a year. We feel that's pretty good to make sure people are on track. Things can change, you know, it's like what people want to do and things like that. So that's kind of why I asked the question about the career discussions, because I think that's an important piece that, you know, a lot of companies don't do enough of. And so here's some things for the filling those gaps. When you put those development plans together, there needs to be a combination of both formal training, which can be like web-based with instructors, self-paced, even remote platform where they log in and work on the platforms hands-on. And there's also OEM training courses available as well. There's also informal training where people can kind of do it on their own time through e-learning courses. What we do is lunch and learn, so we'll have an expert come in. People can, during their lunch break, kind of learn about a new system, have the expert talking through it, and while they're eating their lunch, so they're really not impacting, you know, their assignments or anything like that. And then also there's a lot of blogs, articles, and things online that they can kind of educate themselves, learn the terminology and things like that, so when there are conversations in the training, they're more up to speed and can understand it a little bit better. And then one of the biggest things is hands-on training, and I think you know, that's probably one of the most important. You can do the formal, informal training, but then actually doing the work is really where it sinks in. They really develop those skills. So we do a lot of field shadowing where we'll have someone out in the field actually doing the work and someone shadowing them and watching them and asking questions and learning how to do the job. And then also assigning project work to someone and kind of giving them something new with that oversight, so when they do have questions, someone can answer those questions and those kind of things. And then having a full mentoring program where you're matching up, you know, a mentor and a trainee so that they have someone that they know is going to be helping them develop and grow in their career. And then another thing we've done is sample lab projects. So maybe a project we've done in the past, having them assign that, they can work through it, have someone kind of review and do quality checks on it, and then they can learn from mistakes they make or, you know, how to do things when they run into trouble. So I just got the full results. So it looks like there are actually, so 25% of the respondents actually have career discussions twice a year, which is really good, and that's what we recommend because, again, people, what they want to do with their career can change, and so you really don't want to wait a whole year to find out that that's happened. And about 17% say it's annual. Over 50% said it was informal, and then 8% said never. So the never is kind of concerning because if you're not having those career discussions, then I think a lot of people feel like they don't have the opportunity to grow and expand within their company, and then they may be looking external to go somewhere else to do that. So it's definitely good. I think I am encouraged that there are, you know, close to 40% that do have regular career discussions. But you know, and one issue I see with the 50% that's informal, a lot of times it doesn't happen on a regular basis, and then, you know, employees may feel like they don't have an opportunity to kind of talk about what they want to do next and be really involved and engaged in their career development. So it is important, and I think that's something that, you know, managers and things like that need to be aware of, that especially with the millennials, they want constant feedback. And so it's important that you kind of schedule and develop a program to give them regular feedback throughout their careers to help them grow. And one of the ways we've done that is we've created talent leads. So these are local mentors that help the people within their office, both with technical support. You know, they're overseeing the project work, doing quality peer reviews. They also involved in creating and monitoring their career development. And then also they're involved in doing performance reviews twice a year. So they're getting that feedback. So if there are adjustments they need to make mid-year, they can make them before the end of the year, and then their annual performance review will reflect those improvements and changes. So it's important to have both short-term and long-term development plans. The short-term are the ones like for this year, but you got to look at where they want to go in their career, so those long-term goals need to be set as well. And then obviously, as I discussed, regular career discussions are important. One of the things for what we look at for high potential resources, people that want to move up quickly within the organization, have a lot of leadership aspirations and things like that, we have what we call the 4 A's of high potential. Achievement, so looking at what the achievements, what stretch goals, how have they really pushed themselves. Ambition, do they want to grow? Do they want to take on these tough assignments? Do they have long, short-term goals? Are they willing to put the extra effort in? Do they have the ability? You know, are they demonstrating those technical skills? Are they showing the leadership skills to be able to move up? And then also adaptability. I think this one's important, especially within Maverick, because we've got, you know, 14 offices across the United States. So being able to be flexible in changing roles, changing job assignments, being open to relocation, because the next job for them may not be where they're currently located. It may be in another part of the country. So being open to that and being able to move is important there. And back to the mentoring and with the knowledge matrix. So those local talent leads are also important, but also for the knowledge matrix and to grow, if you have experts in one location, you also need to develop one-to-one relationships outside of the local office, so you can set up formal mentoring between like an expert on a specific platform or a specific skill, and set up trainings in other locations. And, you know, they're going to mentor and share information, and those trainings will provide updates and, you know, going through the training material and improving that and making it better. So it's important that you look at and develop a skill plan around each of those experts to make sure that they're not just sharing their information with one person or just the local people, but that their information is being spread across your company. All right. I think that is it as far as what I have. I did see there's a couple Q&As, so Michaela, are you taking over on this, or?
Yeah, I'll just briefly go over how the Q&A is going to run. So we would like to get some of your feedback and see if you have any questions for the presenters. All we ask is that you enter your question into the Q&A box. I know it's a little confusing. There's a chat box and there's a Q&A box. Let's put all the questions into the Q&A box to keep it all together. Submit them at any time, and if we're unable to get to your question, you can just reach out to the presenters using their email address that's listed on the slide here. And while you're getting your questions in, I just want to remind everyone about ISA's Process Control and Safety Symposium and Exhibition that is November 7th through the 10th in Houston, Texas in the U.S. Registration is open. So go ahead and visit ISA's website. I believe it's isa.org/PCS2016. Take a look at what we've got up there. Maverick's team will be there. Come swing by their booth and say hello. I'm sure they'd be happy to chat with you. Okay, looks like we're starting to see some questions pull in. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Ram to take over the first question, and everyone else feel free to continue to enter your questions in.
Yeah, the first one I have is what level of position requires the most training, technical engineers, project managers, operators, etc. In our experience, we have seen the operational folks that the variables of running a skid or running a back line are going to be a lot of combinations of things that need to be trained will have to be covered. So what you can do and versus what you should do is define the process of what the expectations are from that person. Running a real-life operator station requires training, so we have set up simulators before, make the person go through real-world scenarios of things that will change. So when I was talking about get a conference room and have a conversation, so when the training is complete for your new operators, have them come in to your simulator and change process variables and see how the person reacts in a controlled setup, because you're running a virtual plant at that point. The second toughest one we have seen is for the techs, again for the same reason, the number of variables involved. Engineers doing office work, the training has been easy. And project managers was more around the soft skill development, because they have the experience, they know what is expected. It is more of understanding the company culture, understanding the client, and understanding the do's and don'ts of the job. So the project manager was more of defining the process. Operators was the other extreme, which is more testing the person based on various changes that can happen in real time. John, you have the next one?
Yep. So the next question is the SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, threats analysis, helpful in skill gap mapping. Yes, it is. What I've found is having the assessment tool is good to assess where people are at. And then what we do is regular performance review, where you can look at those specific skills and kind of identify the strengths, the weaknesses, where you're going to assign probably more some development goals around that. And then, you know, the opportunity and threats are also that. I mean, I think as you do the assessment on that, we do it twice a year, that's where you can look at those skills and then kind of have those conversations around that and then capture that within the performance. That's what we've kind of found to be pretty helpful there. There's another quick one I'll answer, and then I'll let Ram take the last one. Is ambition under the umbrella of attitude? And I would say 100%, because really ambition shows their willingness to, and it really shows the attitude they have. You know, are they the type of person that are outgoing, wanting to learn, wanting to take on more challenging assignments and things like that, versus someone who's just okay with just getting by? And so that really, I think that definitely does, you know, that attitude falls under ambition. For sure. And I'll turn it over to Ram to answer the last question. I think it's a follow-up on
one more that just showed up. Yeah, there is a few more that showed up here recently. I'll take the next few. Would you please comment on using simulator pilot plans as tools for training? Yes, very, very, very much. You want to train your operators in a very controlled setup. When a new person coming in to run a skid, this person will not be able to replace a senior guy that's been doing it for 20-some years, because the senior person has seen a lot more hands-on, has seen the variables, the permutation combinations of things that can go wrong. Putting that person through a simulator, you're giving the new employee the training, and also you're giving the opportunity for the senior guy to talk through. So if, like conversations, like the way it happens is when you're explaining something and you're talking through somebody, you just have this flash go in your brain and you think about something you never thought of. What we have found is great conversations lead to great ideas and better ways of doing things. So yes, setting up a simulator and training somebody in a controlled setup is, from a safety standpoint, is something that has to get done. The next question is, would you think that collaboration with universities, colleges need more emphasis and a strong pursuit? Yes, that is, I apologize on my part, I didn't highlight that on my slide. What we have done is we have partnered with technical schools in our area and universities. We have about 21 locations across the country, so you cannot hire all your talent from one university, then people are moving away from homes. So we have partnered with multiple universities across the country, and we participate in their local chapter of IEEE and ISA and AICHE and so on and so forth. And we are also guest speakers and instructors in some of their classes, so it gives us, we are giving something back to the community. And we have built these relationships over the past 18, 19 years. My personal example, I've been working with a local tech school and a local university here. I'm an alumni of SIUE. I've been going there to collaborate with the engineering school. That helps. Again, if it gives you as an employer to know more about the employees because you've had conversations with them, and as an employee, it gives them an opportunity to, it's the dating period before the commitment, right? When somebody's sitting in an interview in front of you in a conference room for an hour or 2 hours, whatever that might be, you need to be fair to your employees that they know what they are signing up for. It's more than just you hiring the right people. It's more of the employee finding the right company if you want to build a long-term partnership with that person. So the next question that came up is, would I or should I build my training instead of sending a new hire or an experienced person to an OEM training? So I think what this person is meaning, it depends. You need a little bit of both. If your training has to be for a product, general use of a product, say if you want somebody to get trained on a product made by an OEM, they know the product better. They have these canned training packages to get you, hey, what does this icon do? Where do I go to the nav bar to click this button? How do I build a screen? How do I configure a block? Those basic elements are going to be cheaper going to an OEM because they've done it a few hundred times. Or in that case, I guess you could also go to somebody like us. We have done it for some of our other clients as well. Buying a packaged product is going to be cheaper. But if you want to train your people on the application, I am a strong believer. If somebody has been doing their job for 25, 30 years and has been good at their jobs for 25, 30 years, you're going to find that person to be the smartest, most knowledgeable person to deliver that training than any OEM you can find. This person has worked in your organization for a long time, knows what the expectations are, knows the culture, knows the area of the plant this person has worked. He's probably moved around across different areas. So using this internal resource as a trainer is building your own training. Either you could bring a new hire to shadow, or you could hire a contractor to come and say, hey, Ram, why don't you work with my senior tech here, shadow him, then give me a training book, and we'll use the training book to train others. You could do that, sending it to an OEM or outsourcing. So the answer is product training, buying is better. Application training, building is going to be a lot more efficient for you. There's one more question that came up. How do you handle training needs for new technologies that you may not have local expertise? I hope I covered that in my previous answer. When you have OEMs if a technology is new that came out yesterday, guess what? Nobody but the guy that made that product is going to be the best one to train you. You got to start somewhere. But if it is applying that technology or applying that product for your application, I would say your internal people are probably the best. There's one more. Sorry, Johnny, I'm taking a few of these. I think there's one more. I'll take this one.
Oh, feel free.
How to provide feedback to the schools on what to teach. So that's came from the previous one. How do you partner is a follow-up to that, I guess. I think I mentioned we are guest speakers, we are instructors, and we also sit in the advisory board. I'll use my case as an example of the local. I'm an alumni of SIUE, so I sit on the board there, and the technical college in town. So when I say we, it's Maverick and a few other companies that are local. When we sit on the board, we discuss the industry trends. We discuss what projects are happening, what technology is happening on what projects. If your curriculum is teaching something that is being replaced today, does it make sense to have you as an instructor teach that course? Because guess what, when these kids graduate in 2, 3, or 4 years, the industry is going to go in a different direction. So we align the industry needs, and it's a two-way street. When we hire engineers and tech people coming into an organization, we have to align with where the industry is so they can apply what they learned in school, rather than learn something in school that's 20 years outdated, then there is no application for what they learned. So that is how the feedback loop is complete. We as consultants, engineers, system integrators, we know where the industry is going. We help the schools teach the new grads of where the industry is going. By the time they graduate and come back to the workforce, they have the skills that need to be productive on day one. I hope I answered that question. If this needs further clarification, please post it on the Q&A block here. And then the next question that came up.
Looks like there's a new one. Ron, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The question is, how do you handle needs for new technologies that you may not have local expertise? So what we've done here at Maverick is we've done the skills matrix. So if it's a skill that's within your company, we've kind of done an assessment, and then we can use that and set up the local mentoring. But a lot of times there's new technologies, and how do you stay up on that? So what we have is what we call technology leaders that we've kind of assigned for all the major platforms. And what they do, what part of their role is to help us to develop that training material. They also attend all the shows and things like that, so they're staying up to date on all the latest and greatest things. And then what they do is when they come back from those shows, they develop the internal training material to share that knowledge across our company, so that information is spread across the company. And then also their responsibility is any projects we have using that technology is they do oversight, and they do kind of technical reviews and a lot of quality reviews around the design and things like that. So I think one of the things that's important is to identify, those critical technologies and things that are going to impact your business, and then just kind of us, making someone as part of their role to keep track of that, and then also distribute that. And then they can also do through mentoring and things like that, they can make sure the other people within your company develop and enhance the skills around those technologies as well. Does this add to the overall project cost? It does somewhat, but I think with the new technologies and stuff, you got to look at the right applications and things like that. But a lot of times newer technologies can also save you on the labor costs because they'll be more efficient, or time savings and things like that. So I think it's a balance, and you got to look at where those efficiencies outweigh the overall cost for the training and things like that. So I think it's good to be up to speed on it, so you can look at where it makes sense to use those new technologies and where it doesn't, because using the latest and greatest isn't always the best, and you got to kind of have someone that knows it well enough to determine when to use the new technologies and when the proven technologies are probably the best way to go. And that's why having that person who's technically sound and knows everything can help make those decisions for you.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate everybody that participated in today's webinar, either through the Q&A or through the poll questions. Everybody's been great. And if you happen to miss any portion of this webinar, we did record it. So if you missed it, or you want to share this webinar with your colleagues, I'll be sending you a link to the recording, hopefully today, if not early next week, so that way you can share that. Along with, in the email, I'll send a link to the recording and some additional information surrounding this webinar for you to reference. And like I said earlier, once this webinar closes, there's a short little survey. It doesn't take very long. If you don't mind just taking a minute or two to answer it, that'll be very helpful. and we hope you acquired useful information, and we hope to see you again in one of our future webinars. Thank you.